What's up everybody? Despite Overwatch's vast cast of diverse characters, there's always someone or something that players would like to see added. Some players want an evil Omnic, others a Talon Tank, a Flamethrower weapon, or how about a member of the Null Sector terrorist organization? As it turns out, all four of these things can actually go together pretty well, which is what led me to design FEENIX, the evil Omnic Null Sector Talon Tank with a Flamethrower. This is Master Ian Gamer, and let's get into it. First, a quick synopsis of his backstory. Originally an F-33 immolator unit deployed by Null Sector for human extermination during the King's Row Uprising, FEENIX and the rest of his kind were deactivated and destroyed following Overwatch's intervention and ultimate victory over the Omnic terrorists. However, several years later, Talon managed to get their hands on the remains of one of these old F-33 Flamethrower Omnics. They upgraded its hardware and attempted to reprogram him into an obedient soldier, an attempt which turned out partially successful. Now possessing the bicameral mind of Null Sector's anti-human protocols and modern-day Talon's dark agenda, FEENIX has become a deadly weapon for his current organization, capable of not only incinerating any who stand in his way, but also striking fear into the hearts of both man and machine. I actually wrote a whole origin story for FEENIX where I delve into his personal backstory and the reason behind his name, but it proved too long to fit into just this video. Therefore, I'm going to be uploading that in its own video shortly after this one, so be sure to stay tuned for that if it isn't out already, and check the video cards and description for more details. Getting onto the character itself though, let's start with his base stats. In terms of his overall body shape and design, think of a Terran Firebat from StarCraft. As I'm sure many of you already picked up on, my hero idea shared so much in common with these units that I used their design from Heroes of the Storm as the base for my visual representation of FEENIX, which I'm going to be using in this video. As for his size and dimensions, he'd be very similar to Roadhog, although slightly smaller all around. This is offset though by him having a slightly smaller health pool as well, being 500 total, with 300 being health and 200 being armor. Furthermore, his head is quite small and partially sunken into his body, thus making headshots exceptionally difficult to land on him, especially from behind. Moving on now to his abilities, FEENIX's primary fire is, unsurprisingly, Flamethrower. This weapon deals decent damage at close range and inflicts enemies with an afterburn effect which can be deadly over time. The fire spewed by Flamethrower is a beam, almost exactly like Mei's primary fire, but a bit thicker in terms of the beam's overall hitbox volume. As I said, when an enemy is hit by Flamethrower, they become ignited and will take burn damage over time. This burn effect is identical to that on Ash's Dynamite. Flamethrower deals 90 DPS and has a max range of 10 meters. For comparison, Zarya's primary fire, which is also a beam, deals 95 to 190 DPS depending on her charge, with a range of 15 meters. Granted, she can only hit a single target at a time, while FEENIX can hit multiple targets simultaneously, but it's a trade-off which is also balanced by their other abilities, which I'll be getting onto in just a second. Flamethrower has an ammo capacity of 100 and consumes 20 rounds per second, meaning that the weapon can be fired consecutively for up to 5 seconds before needing to reload. The burn aspect is, as I said, identical to Ash's Dynamite. It deals 100 damage over the course of 5 seconds, thus being 20 DPS. Burn also affects barriers and turrets, has its damage halved by armor, and is removed immediately upon taking a health pack. Moving on to his passive ability, he has Volatile. When FEENIX takes damage, it ruptures the numerous fuel veins lining his body, thus causing him to briefly emit flames in a short AoE around himself. These flames deal minor damage themselves, but will ignite any enemies hit by them in the same way as Flamethrower, thus making him even more dangerous when in close range combat. These flames can only be triggered once every 4 seconds and emit for a duration of 1 second. The flames themselves deal 25 DPS, but since they're only active for 1 second at a time, the most damage they can deal directly to a single enemy per activation is 25 damage. However, their primary purpose is to inflict nearby enemies with burn, which, if untreated, will go on to deal an additional 100 damage over time. Now, at this point, there are a couple clarifications I'd like to make to help with understanding burn and its place in FEENIX's kit. Since he has multiple abilities which are capable of inflicting the burn status effect, it should be noted that all these abilities effectively share the same burn effect per target. This means getting hit consecutively by each of these abilities won't cause multiple stacked burn effects, but rather each would reset the duration for which the inflicted player is on fire. The direct damage from these sources can stack if used in unison, just not the burn status effect. Additionally, a player will not start taking burn damage until after they are no longer taking damage from the source directly. For example, when getting hit by Flamethrower, you'll only take the 90 DPS from the weapon itself. Once you are no longer being hit by it, then you'll immediately begin to suffer the 20 DPS from the burn status effect. If you get hit by Flamethrower or any of his other burn inflicting abilities while already on fire, burn will effectively be removed for the duration of you taking that direct damage, and then be reapplied afterwards with the full status effect duration having been reset to 5 seconds. This is done to simplify the manner in which players take damage from burn-inflicting sources, which is important for FEENIX given that he has multiple abilities like this, which are also capable of dealing their own direct damage over time. Additionally, while I'm sure a lot of you are concerned about how annoying this burn effect would be, in actuality, I think you'd find it not nearly that bad. At least when it comes to FEENIX, burn is restricted to his close-range abilities. I specifically designed him this way so that if you're outside his 10-meter range, you're safe from getting burned. If you get too close to him though, that's on you. Just keep your distance. Also, the DPS of burn is very low. 20 DPS can be easily out-healed by most healing abilities. The reason behind having the burn effect in his kit isn't only to fit with the fire theme, but also to serve as a deterrent from wanting to get near him. It's the same principle as with Roadhog, where he tanks predominantly through the threat of his hook and high close-range damage output. The fear of FEENIX's fire allows him to control areas and create space for his team, while also serving as effective peel for his supports when getting harassed by close-range flankers. So, having covered the in-game importance of his fire, let's move on to his activated abilities. First up is Smokescreen. FEENIX fires a grenade which, upon hitting the ground, begins emitting a large cloud of smoke. This smoke cloud doesn't block or deal any damage, but is opaque to the enemy, thus allowing it to be used to conceal your team for short periods of time. Given the unique properties of this ability, let me break it all down. Upon activation, FEENIX fires an arcing projectile. This projectile is almost identical to the one used for deploying Orisa's barrier, and behaves in exactly the same way when it comes to interacting with walls and deploying on the ground. The one key difference, however, is that it behaves like a conventional projectile when it comes to interacting with deflect and defense matrix. Once the smoke grenade successfully makes contact with the ground, it immediately starts to emit a spherical cloud of smoke. Think of Winston's barrier projector, only slightly smaller. The smoke emitted by this ability appears to the enemy as a dark, opaque cloud with a slight reddish hue. Anyone on your team who is fully concealed within the cloud cannot be seen by the enemy, with the exception of wallhack abilities like Widow's Infrasight, Hanzo's Sonic Arrow, or Sombra's Opportunist passive. If an enemy themselves is standing in the cloud, they'll be effectively blind, and only able to see things like map markers and teammate icons. For your team, the smoke screen only appears as a mostly translucent cloud with a slight bluish hue. It's much like looking through a friendly barrier, where it blocks little to no vision, but is just visible enough for you to know that the smoke screen is present in that location. This is also made even more evident by the deployed smoke grenade itself, which would be visible on the ground at the center of the cloud. Smokescreen covers a spherical radius of 4 meters, has a duration of 4 seconds, and a cooldown of 9 seconds. Additionally, the cooldown starts at the time of firing the grenade, while the smokescreen duration doesn't start until it actually touches the ground. However, you may only have one smokescreen out at a time, thus preventing players from pulling shenanigans where they fire it straight into the air to start the cooldown, and then delay its actual deployment until after they're able to fire a second one. In this case, the first smokescreen will immediately disappear upon firing out another. Even without blocking damage, smokescreen can be an effective tanking mechanic in that it prevents the enemy from knowing your exact position. This can be incredibly effective at choke points, as obscuring vision at this one position can prevent them from being able to see anything on the other side. Furthermore, it can also be used to provide quick cover for specific teammates. If your healer is getting harassed by a flanker, just smokescreen their position to give your support the upper hand for either escaping or fighting back. Smokescreen is designed to be very versatile and capable of making space in a number of situations, be it pushing into the enemy team or covering your own hasty retreat. FEENIX's second activated ability is From the Ashes. This is his primary self-sustain, and once again is very unique from anything else that exists in-game. When From the Ashes is activated, all damage dealt to him for the ability's duration charges his ultimate instead of the enemy's. Furthermore, like the Phoenix of Greek mythology, if his health reaches 0 during the ability, he explodes into fire and instantly resurrects at full health. As I said, this ability may sound strange, so let me break it down. While there are a lot of tanking methods in Overwatch already, most of them revolve around reducing or preventing damage taken. From the Ashes, however, takes a different approach to this by not mitigating the amount of damage dealt to FEENIX, but rather by rewarding him for taking it. This reward is charged for his ultimate, and even possibly a full heal if he plays it right. The best way of thinking about this ability is to consider Zarya's particle barrier. Damaging her while it's active benefits Zarya and her team. The ultimate charge FEENIX gains during From the Ashes is directly proportional to the amount of health he loses, and at the same time, enemies gain no charge from damaging him. This means he gains charge from tanking enemy ultimates as well, which typically don't provide any charge for the player using them. This also makes it doubly favorable for FEENIX's team, as not only will he charge his own ultimate, but also the ultimates of his team's support heroes who now get to heal him, all without giving any ultimate charge to the enemy. Even if the enemy tries going so far as to kill him, doing so while the ability is still active will instead result in giving him a full heal and also trigger his volatile passive regardless of its cooldown. Now, there are a few things I want to clarify about the resurrect aspect of this ability. It's technically only a resurrect in name, as he never actually dies during the process. Reaching 0 health just instantly resets him to 300 health, 200 armor. It doesn't grant him the same temporary invulnerability like Mercy's res, and it doesn't interrupt his movement or ability cooldowns in any way. However, this instant health reset isn't technically a heal either, as it can't be blocked by anti-heal and doesn't generate any ultimate charge for himself. Furthermore, resurrecting like this instantly ends From the Ashes, thus making it impossible to resurrect multiple times if you're taking a lot of damage over a short period. Also, the resurrect doesn't happen if FEENIX dies from environmental damage, such as falling off a ledge. From the Ashes has a 2-second duration and 10-second cooldown, which starts after the ability ends. This makes it identical to Zarya's particle barrier in terms of uptime and cooldown. The trade-offs of these two abilities, though, are that while From the Ashes helps your team charge ultimates and can give FEENIX immense personal sustain, it doesn't offer any protection whatsoever from crowd control, which is therefore the most effective way to counter this ability. Also, like similar hero buff abilities, From the Ashes has a prominent visual indicator while it's active to warn the enemy that he's using it. Overall, From the Ashes can be an incredibly powerful ability, but only if it's used intelligently. A smart enemy will know to just simply not shoot you while it's active, and certainly not to try and kill you. This makes it a very effective escape tool for disengaging, as you can activate it to secure your retreat. It's also great against enemy spam, as you can just position yourself wherever there's enemy gunfire to either charge your ultimate or even get a full heal. But at the same time, it's risky to try playing too aggressively with it. If you reach low health but don't actually die before the ability expires, then you'll be incredibly prone to the enemy. This is where you can get effective combo potential though. For example, your Zarya might pop her projected barrier on you right when the enemy thinks you're an easy kill, or you can use smokescreen to cover your retreat after making a play that netted you a ton of ult charge. Again, given how unique of a mechanic this is, there's a lot of interesting strategies and mind games which I could see evolving around it. Speaking of ultimate charge though, now let's get on to FEENIX's actual ultimate, which is Immolate. FEENIX detonates the fuel tanks in his body, causing them to explode outwards and ignite the ground around him. This creates a large radius of fire around his point of detonation, which damages enemies caught in it and inflicts them with burn. The best comparison to make here is to Mei's Blizzard, as both serve as area denial over a large radius. However, while Blizzard can be cast at range, deals only minor damage, and primarily slows and freezes enemies, Immolate activates from FEENIX's current position, deals much higher damage, and ignites any enemies caught in it. Immolate has a 1-second cast time, 10-meter radius, and lasts 5 seconds, putting it on par with Mei's Blizzard in these regards. However, unlike the spherical shape of Blizzard, Immolate is more flat, and affects players up to 5 meters above the burning ground, regardless of how near or far they are from the center of the fire circle. The fire itself deals 50 DPS to all enemies standing in it and inflicts inflicts burn upon leaving the fire in the same way as Flamethrower or Volatile. While 50 DPS is much higher than the 20 DPS of Maze Blizzard, it still works better as an area denial rather than as straight up damage. For example, even if you're at ground zero upon Immolate's activation, most heroes can escape without dying to the fire. The base move speed for the majority of Overwatch's roster is 5.5 meters per second. This means that when starting from the center and having a straight shot, you can reach the edge of the fire circle in roughly 1.8 seconds. At 50 DPS, this means you'll take about 91 damage before escaping the flames, and even with the additional 100 damage inflicted by burn after leaving the fire, that still only comes out to 191 damage, which by itself isn't enough to even kill a squishy hero. Immolate isn't a particularly strong ultimate, but that's offset by the fact that it charges fairly quickly, especially when utilizing From the Ashes. Overall, FEENIX as a hero is designed to best fit the role of an off-tank who primarily creates space through his close-range damage. While Smokescreen and From the Ashes can't provide consistent long-term cover or sustain, they're useful in the same way as Defense Matrix or Particle Barrier, where you activate them strategically to counter the enemy. Admittedly, FEENIX's kit does introduce a lot of brand new mechanics to the game, which would require extensive testing with a prototype hero in order to make balanced. So if he ever was to be added to the roster, he'd likely undergo some substantial adjustments from what I've been able to calculate for just this concept video. But hey, there's only so much one can do when it comes to just conceptualizing a new Overwatch hero. And speaking of which, feel free to check out the other hero concepts I've already made videos covering, such as Demon and the Junker Queen. I'll have cards linking to those on screen and in the description, so feel free to check them out. Also be sure to look forward to the FEENIX origin story I've written, which will be uploaded shortly after you're watching this if it isn't already. Again, check the cards in description for more details. And with that, thank you all so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts about my FEENIX tank hero concept down in the comments below. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and share it with a friend if you really liked it. Subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and hit up the bell to never miss any of my future Overwatch content and hero concepts. This is Master Ian Gamer signing off, and until next time, take a deep breath and smell the ashes.